Awesome. So, thanks for joining my talk. I want to make sure that, we're answering questions. We have a small group, so I'm happy to talk through whatever you guys are more interested in. But today, I'm going to be talking about the UX design process and incorporating AI generating workflows. This talk was inspired because I was talking to some engineers who work in startups in the New York area. And they basically asked this question of like, how do you create the best layout? Like we can like use like all these AI tools and whatnot, but like I don't know how to make the best layout. And I was like, that is a very engineering brain question. And oops, and I'm gonna answer it. So a little bit about me. I am a UX designer or product designer as my full-time job. And I've worked in a lot of different early stage startups and then also enterprise companies working in health tech and AI and HR tech. And today I'll be sharing, things that I've learned as well as some of my own experimentation because AI is changing all the time. I gave this talk a month ago, actually exactly a month ago, and things have changed and it's crazy. But I would just try to share as much up-to-date information as I can. And at the core of it, UX design is going to be the same whether it's like Web 1.0 or Web 3.0 or AI or not AI. So that's the exciting part. So I wanted to hear a little bit from you guys, and you guys can feel free to also put it in chat. I know that some people are eating, so I'd love to hear kind of, an introduction, like who you are, what you guys do, what you guys are hoping to get out of it, and then just some broader thoughts on like, what are your thoughts on the direction of like um, AI using or AI being used in design tools?
Yeah, I can jump in. Adam Rukin, 2017 fellow. Been in product management since then, and haven't really explored, much beyond image generation. So curious to understand where you can speed up the development process or design process or discovery process.
Cool.
Yep. And then I'm Jocelyn, everyone. I'm a 2024 fellow, and I am part of a early stage property tech startup called RentCheck. I'm not a product designer. I actually just joined the product team like a week ago. I was on customer success. But one of the things one of our product designers has been saying is around how AI tools can't really replicate specific artistic styles and handle complex scenes efficiently. So I was really interested in this call just to get some insights to potentially share with the team. So I'm really excited to be here.
Thanks for sharing.
I can jump in. I'm Steven. I'm a data engineer. I don't the team I'm on doesn't really do much UX UI, but I'm really like impressed by the sorts of things that people have done in this area with coming up with self-contained sort of applications with just a couple prompts. And I can imagine that sort of thing like translating to other fields like engineering too. So I'm kind of here to like see if I can get a preview of like what's in store for my own job 6 months from now.
Sweet. Yeah. Awesome. So, I think that thanks for sharing. I love kind of hearing, what people are kind of background people are coming from and what people want their, what kind of questions they're coming with. So, um, I think we had a Skillshare a couple weeks ago, actually maybe a month ago or two, I don't know. But basically we're talking about the different types of AI generating workflows. I have basically three categories, and shout out to Sivna for sharing this because basically I took this and played around with it. So one kind of AI generating workflow is taking a prompt and designing it. So Figma AI, for example, has like a little text box where you can be like, I want this kind of thing. And then it generates a design for you out in Figma, which is the design standard tool. There's design to code where you take a ready Figma design, you put into Figma IO. You can also use Figma dev mode. All of that costs money. And then some of the other ones include prompt to production. So this is where you can basically prompt some sort of like web app. And some examples of that are V0, Lovable. A lot of these tools change all the time. I've heard about like Windsurf, and people are like switching from Cursor to Windsurf. So a lot of this stuff is just changing all the time. But generally, I think we're going to get these kind of general workflows for AI that will generate either designs or code for you. So I think what's important to understand is that we have all these great tools, but at the end of the day, they're tools. And they are not necessarily solving what you want, because typically if you're working at a startup, you have some kind of problem that you guys are trying to solve. And it's important to understand before you go into design or into production what the user problem is that you're trying to solve. So I'm going to have a lot of health tech examples throughout this PowerPoint because I work in health tech. But you can ask, for example, Cursor to say, like, I want a pretty payment screen with a pretty layout, but that's not necessarily going to solve the problem that you're looking for. I think it's important to understand who the user is, what does the user need to do, the nice to haves, and then what is the ideal workflow for users to achieve their goal. So this is a mix of just product management and design to understand what kind of business problem we're trying to solve. So when you're thinking about human-centered design and what kind of workflow you want for your solution, what would the perfect solution look like? And then if things went really badly, if things failed, what would happen after that? How would you help the user troubleshoot their problem that they're having? So after that, if you can answer these questions, then you can start to sketch out what those workflows might look like. So for example, let's say that I was working like the health tech space. So let's say you have a returning med spa user. They go to the med spa, they get their laser hair removal stuff, and they have bills that come up that they want to pay off with a card of their choice. They want to see which cards are expired, and if possible, also remove the cards that they have that are expired. So now that you've answered some of the questions of like who the user is, what's the problem that you're trying to solve, you can start sketching out what is the workflow, the general high-level bird's eye view of what this product and solution will look like. So you can start with kind of a workflow of like, let's say there's some kind of communication, whether it's like a text or an email, that they have an outstanding bill. The user can choose to click on that communication and pay off the bill. And then let's say that the user can see their saved and expired cards and pay off the bill. But then also at the beginning, we're talking about deleting expired cards. So my question for y'all is, do you think a user should be able to delete expired cards?
I say yes, because what's the point of having that there? Like, it's excess, right? If they can't even use it to make the transaction.
Yeah, I think I'd agree with that.
I think that this is an important kind of let's learn a little bit topic, because basically when you're trying to build these user experiences, you're setting up traffic cones to get the user to where they need to go. So if your goal is to ultimately get someone to pay off a bill, and that's the goal, you're setting up the traffic cones. Introducing being able to remove cards on file introduces friction to actually paying off the bill. Sometimes you want friction. What are case scenarios where you think friction might be good in a user experience?
Whenever you're like about to delete an important file, there's like a pop-up that says, "Are you sure you want to delete it?" That's
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a good point that, sometimes if there are things that have drastic changes to your overall experience or your data, you definitely want to have some obstacles to be able to do those things. And in this case scenario, if you're trying to help someone pay off a bill, introducing a functionality to also remove their cards on file while also paying introduces a little bit more friction. So basically through this exercise of thinking through the high level workflows, we can understand that like maybe it would be a good idea for them to see their expired cards on file, but it would make sense to put it in a separate place because A, you're introducing more functionality, and B, you're keeping the user focused on, I need to pay off a bill. I can manage my cards in a different spot, right? Like think to your Amazon experience. Like, do you usually remove your cards on file when you're paying for like a order? So just kind of probing a little bit on like the importance of thinking through your workflows at a high level and what will guide your user with the right traffic cones to the right experience. Cool. So we talked a little about workflows. Now let's talk about like, okay, we have some workflows, we have some requirements. How can we use graphic design principles? Because good UI also contributes to a good UX. So I will just go through graphic design at a high level, and then we'll apply these, I don't know, improvements, little magic moments to an AI generated design. So in graphic design, we think about color, we think about typography, what the font is like, right? We think about imagery, what kind of icons does it have? And then we also think about grid layouts. We can also include things like motion. So think back to when you slide, I don't know if you guys have iOS, but like if you slide an email to the left, right, you get a little bit of motion, it feels smooth. So that's an example of motion that contributes to a good UI. We can also personalize things. So think to when you are, I don't know, logging back into something and it greets you with your name. That's an example of personalization. Or having really pleasing interaction. So thinking about like the haptic that you might get when you get a text message, right? That's an example of interaction that we can add on top of software. So I went to Figma AI, and this was back when it was beta, and well, maybe it might be out of beta. I don't even know. It changes all the time. And basically asked it to generate a payment method screen for the case scenario that we were talking about earlier. And it gave me this. So kind of curious to hear, what do you guys think? What do you guys think of this design?
It seems like a good starting point, but it has those remove buttons that we were in our workflow, we decided didn't really fit.
What do you think is a good starting point about it?
It has the basic information that we talked about, like they can pick a card or they can add a new card.
Cool.
Yeah, and then also like the familiarity of the iOS components at the top, like the little time and the charger.
Yeah.
Not sure what the select option is there for.
Yeah. Yeah, I think these are all really good points. I think what Steven said about this being a good starting point is very true. I think it provides kind of, the information you want to display. I like the color here, right? Like it pops out, it has a high contrast against a white background. And the basic general idea is there, right? So why don't we use our graphic design principles and apply them to make this design a little bit better? So we can start first by addressing the color, right? Like I said, I like the color, I like the bubbliness of the cards. So we can easily take color to create a traffic cone for what we want our users' attention to be. So because this is a select, we can use that instead to be a radio button because this is a component that you use to select something, right? We can also use color to adjust the user to where we want them to go, right? We would like for them to add a new card, but at the end of the day, we want them to pay. We want to guide them to this traffic cone of pay off your bill, because we want to, we want to make money, right? Or we can also add color to highlight things that are errors, like something is expired, right? We can also adjust the typography, right? So The AI made payment methods really bold, but I think at the end of the day, our goal is to guide the user to confirm a card selection or select a card and then move on to pay, right? So highlighting something like the Visa and their number is important. Next we have also iconography, right? With this little small change, we can allow the user to just simply scan what they have. Oh, this is my Visa, this is my MasterCard, or adding iconography into buttons also helps differentiate and create those traffic cones to guide the user along to pay off their bill. And then lastly, you can also add a little bit of personalization. I don't think it really matters. Obviously, these are your payment methods. You can kind of see at a glance with these graphic design principles that we're looking at our cards, we're looking at our stored payment methods, but adding a little bit of personalization as like, these are your cards, or this is welcome back, Stephen, right? This helps add a little bit of personalization to make you know that like, this is you, this is your account. So basically, when it comes to ideation, I think what Steven said about it being a good starting point is I totally agree with it. It helps in ideation boosting. It can help speed up repetitive work if you are building a lot of design system components and they look the same. But really, we're talking about a human-centered design process. And so a lot of the current tools still lack that deep understanding that comes with someone who knows human-centered design. And it also lacks a little bit of usability. So, but you can always take these as a starting point and keep iterating on it to be more refined and make sense for humans. Any thoughts?
So for the images in the previous slide, how granular did you get with reprompting, like in order to generate these images? I'm assuming you were still using Figma to like generate.
Oh, I will admit I was doing this by hand. So like
Oh,
I
okay.
started with a starting point of like, oh, okay, this is a nice color, but it's just not like I think I could probably reprompt it. I don't think Figma AI's reprompting is good. Actually, I don't like it. I think it keeps regenerating stuff, and it's like I don't want that. I want you to like reiterate, and that's what design is. Like you're reiterating on something that at least Figma AI does not capture well.
Olga,
Mhm.
do you typically use these image generations for only the first wireframe, or do you use them further along in the process as well?
Yeah, so actually, funny you asked that because I was going to talk about my AI, my current flow for generating UI using AI. So we have a design, let's build it. I will say that I guess because I am a product designer and I work in software that already has established design patterns that AI is just not capturing, right? Like, like the company that I work at, like it uses like an edit pencil to edit data tables, right? That's something that the AI doesn't know. And I wouldn't say it's good at knowing that context. But but if I'm building stuff more for like a startup or like other web apps that are personal projects, the tools that I personally use, so I should also include Figma on here as well. But basically, I've used like Figma AI a little bit to kind of, you know, I have my idea of what a certain thing should look like. Figma has a certain way of thinking that software should look like. So I think it's a good like starting point, right? I can take that Figma design that I worked on and iterated on, put it into builder.io, which is good for pulling out buttons and text fields and whatnot. My favorite tool is Cursor. I love Cursor. Basically, it's a fork of Visual Studio Code, which is the popular developer code environment. And they added on this AI level to it where you can it's using like Claude, which is a really good code generator, and the components from the Okay, I'll just wait. But yeah, so I use Cursor a lot, and what's nice about Cursor is basically you can talk to your AI and to edit your code. And another app that I use is called Whisper.flow. I think that there's some VFA alum that work there, and honestly, I really like this platform. Basically, you can just click a button and it will dictate to you and write it out, so it can write emails for you. I use it to dictate to fix like my code or something. So highly recommend these tools. Oh, okay. Gotcha. So I think the main tool that I've been using, because I guess I already come from like a design background. I know what I want my designs to look like. But really for me as a designer, I use a lot of Cursor to actually push this into code or production so that we can make something that's prototypable. I can share this with developers. And honestly, Cursor changes all of the time. Like every time I log on, there's a new update. So it's definitely, they're hustling. It's a new startup. They are hustling. But um, basically, the way that I use Cursor is, let's say that I have a web app that I want to build. There's this chat or ask functionality that it has. And I can basically ask it like, I want to do this. It's achieving this. How do I set up my software to do this, right? And this is coming more from like I need to understand what the software structure should be like in order for this to be successful. I think Steven earlier was talking about a web app that someone made, and then the security of it was just like not there at all. And that's probably because the person didn't even know, how do I make a secure database app, right? So this is where at the beginning stages of designing this or pushing this out into production, that could be a good place to ask Cursor, how do I make this as a secure database, right? And then Cursor also has this agent view. Again, they change this name all the time. It like, I don't know, it can be like ask, chat, compose. They've just had a lot of different names for Cursor, but generally the agent is where you can take the AI and tell it to regenerate something and iterate on something. Yeah. So after you do your research through the chat, after talking to, I would also recommend talking to ChatGPT. This is also where you can set up rules in the Cursor directory. So the Cursor directory is basically, the way that Cursor is built is that it has already these prompts to the AI, like, you are a good code generator, right? Like you have really good practices in development. But you, as in within your project, you can also set up rules like, I want this to be built only in TypeScript. Do not use any JavaScript, right? That would be an example of some rules that you would set in your Cursor directory. And then my final tip is, as with any AI, you want to refrain from telling Cursor what not to do, because it's not good at accepting negative prompts. It doesn't do well with prompts like that. So instead, use something like, if you if there's some kind of weird 3JS model malfunctioning that's like the animation's not smooth, instead say something in your prompt to be like, for the model, keep this, keep this, keep this, and do this. It just does not do well with like, I don't know, a little whipping, right? Yeah, has anyone played around with Cursor? I highly recommend playing around with it. I think if you guys are working in product or code or software, it's definitely the direction that the software industry is moving into. So
We we have licenses to Windsurf code editor, which I believe is a direct competitor.
yeah, I haven't tried it. How do you feel about it?
I don't use it much, but like our team loves it.
Yeah. Yeah, I haven't heard until windsurf until like last week. So, I don't know. Some of my friends who work at like NVIDIA, use Cursor. So, it'll be interesting to see, who wins out the battle, you know?
For
Um,
sure.
cool. So I wanted to wrap this up. So we've talked a little bit about human-centered design, designing it, building it out into production. And I think at the end of the day, we want to make sure that what we're building is making life easier, is solving our problems for humans. Because at the end of the day, it's easy to solve a problem for yourself if you're building for yourself. But a lot of times in the software industry, we're building products for others. So it's really important to be comfortable with listening to others and receiving feedback. So I wanted to talk a little bit about usability testing, which is one of my favorite parts about UX, is being able to talk to users, put a prototype in front of them, and listen and see how they interact with your prototype to test how intuitive your product is. But in order to prepare for usability testing, there's a lot of research, or there's a lot of prep work you need to do to get to that point of like putting the prototype in front of them. I think especially in startups, it's really difficult to recruit users, people who would be using your product, right? So, I know Jocelyn said you worked in like customer success. And so I think that people who are sales reps, or customer success managers, or implementation specialists, they've been working with the end users, and they would be perfect people to talk to get their feedback, because they work with the customers. They have a lot of experience and probably have a good scheme of like what our clients want. Before you also conduct usability testing, think about kind of what research questions have been coming up when you're designing or pushing code. Maybe there are some open questions that you might disagree with. Steven might have a different opinion. So, but ultimately at the end of the day, we're building for users. So we want to understand what those questions are and voice them in our usability testing session. When you're testing a functionality of a prototype, try to come with a script of use cases, not task completion. So what I mean by that is, like, let's say that I don't know, I prototyped an Apple Watch, and one new feature on it is being able to record your heart rate. So a task completion exercise would be like, how would you find your heart rate, right? But that's leading the user right to like picking the heart rate portion, right? We want to create a use case of, let's say you went on a run, what will be some things you would do after the run, right? Because I think a lot of times people are interested in like what their heart rate was, heart rate variability, right? So basically come with a realistic use case scenario of when someone might use their prototype, right? And when you're also preparing the script, try to come with open-ended questions. So some of my favorite open-ended questions are like, how do you feel about this process? What do you find confusing? People want to please you, so try to stay away from yes or no questions, or questions like, do you like this? Because people are going to say, yeah, this is great. But that's not valuable feedback. You want to elicit genuine feedback about whether your prototype is intuitive. When you're doing a usability testing session, if you can be in their physical environment, that's great. But if you're remote, just set the right context of like, let's say you're a front desk staff. How would you check out a patient, right? In my usability testing sessions, I typically ask for permission to record. This helps you stay truly present, and you can always review a usability testing session to see where things were confusing. When someone gives you feedback, just be very neutral about it. That was helpful. Gotcha. Just stuff that's very neutral, as opposed to something that's like, yes, I was right. My PM was wrong, right? We don't want to be emotional about any kind of feedback that we're being given. And just be a good listener, ask follow-up questions that are open-ended, and try to lean into where the confusion in your prototype is, because that's where you're probably going to need to iterate upon. My last kind of golden nugget moment that I'm going to leave with you guys is called the doorknob effect. So at the end of a usability testing session, ask, is there anything else that we haven't covered? And if they haven't shared with you already, they will reveal some kind of crucial insight at the end of the interview. Why do you guys think that is?
Well, likely it was, if they thought of it, it was on their mind at some point, and then maybe through just the flow of the conversation, they forgot to bring it up, or it just wasn't prompted the right way. So if it's important to them, then it should be important to you too.
Yeah. I think with interviews or testing prototypes, people are generally stressed and afraid to give you like very honest feedback. But when it's the very end of an interview, people are ready to head out. And this is probably where they're going to be the most honest because it doesn't even matter anymore, right? Like they're about to leave the interview anyway. And then also, Jocelyn, like you said, like they basically had this like high-end overview of like what the product is, what the goal is, and so they've had a little bit of time to synthesize what's been going on as opposed to being put on the spot. So I think it's been very helpful in my own usability testing feedback. So yeah. Um, so when it comes to AI and UX, the question is, are we there yet? And I don't think so. I think that there's still a lot of human tweaking and human context that AI is missing right now. And I really like this quote from Stuart Brand that says that it's important to do what's good for humans, modeled on how humans already do things. You need to ignore what's convenient for computers because AI will generate something, but you need to make sure that at the end of the day, you're building something for humans. And I think also some misconceptions that I've heard from engineers is that, design is just, it's a blank canvas. It's like art and we just like make something beautiful. But the reality is that there's a lot of thinking, there's a lot of testing, and there's a lot of iteration that you have to do as a UX designer. So and AI is just a tool that can either help you with iteration or maybe hopefully AI tools would get a little bit better at like helping iterating. So yeah, that was my spiel. Feel free to connect with me and if you guys or your companies are working on anything interesting, feel free to hit me up and chat with me.
Heck yeah. Thanks, Olga.
Thank you so much, Olga. This was really helpful.
Thanks, y'all. Can I get a little picture maybe? I might post it on my LinkedIn.
Yes. Wait, let me turn my camera.
Okay, I'll do. Yeah, but okay, I'm gonna do a little picture. Thanks. Okay. Thanks, y'all.
Actually,
you.
I had a quick question before we left
Yeah.
because you were just at a tech conference.
Yeah.
Have you seen any movement or heard any chatter around like trying to put in vision models into like the next step of this process to like apply that kind of human-centered like I don't know synthesis or maybe like have an AI navigate a workflow and give feedback?
Mhm. So are you when you're saying vision models, are you talking about like Comfy UI integration, I guess?
Um, I, d- s- I don't I'm not familiar with the model that you mentioned, but something
Okay.
like what is it like DeepSeek is an image model. And if you could like prime that with images of things that are good design and things that are bad design, and then
Mm.
kind of reinforce that way.
Mhm. Um, I think there's so many ways to make AI models, and um, I think that AI models that are built off of code are a little bit better, as opposed to images, because images are still SVGs or still PNGs. So, and they lack that flexibility that being able to move like a button or a div have.
Mm.
Um, so I would say that like my impression from the tech conference that I was at is that there's going to be more AI coding. There's going to be a lot more advancements because the issue with all this AI stuff is that it's slow, it needs internet. So I know that the direction of the industry is to move into AI computers where you can just have an AI already on your computer and it doesn't take away GPU power. You don't have to like connect to the internet to connect to another AI that will then run it. And then we have all this data centers and all this energy, blah, 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 right? So I think that's where the direction of the industry is. And I think that I expect also there's going to be a lot more AI voice assistants, AI scribing. Well, okay, this is coming more from health tech, but there's going to be a lot more of like AI being used as a tool to look at data and generate more data for you.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Cool. Thanks.
What other questions do you guys have? Maybe you guys have a cool project that we can chat about.
Well, I'm just curious, I guess like out of all the tools that we kind of mentioned in the beginning, the one that I actually pay a subscription for and kind of have been getting more reps in has been Lovable.
Mhm.
What's your take on like pros, cons, limitations as part of the design process for Lovable specifically?
Yeah, I haven't actually played around with it. I've played around, well, I use Cursor. I think we'll see. I've heard there are talks about Figma being acquired by Lovable, which if that happens, that's going to be crazy. That'll be like the next step up, and maybe, this whole talk will be super out of date then. You never know. But yeah, what are your thoughts on Lovable?
I really like it. I think one of the things that stands out to me in comparison to other competitors like Bolt is that it's really good at debugging itself. And for example, whenever there's a troubleshooting issue, it'll say specifically like think about this step by step, which I've done some reading and like that's chain of thought prompting. And so for some reason, like just the debugging process feels a lot faster with Lovable. And then the other thing is you can actually directly edit some text in the generated, website or the UI, which I'm pretty sure you can't do that in other platforms. Like you'll have to say change the word here to this, but in Lovable you can directly click on the component and like just edit it directly, which I think is like really, really advanced.
Yeah, that's neat. That's neat. Yeah, I guess I use a lot of Cursor. I have a little bit of coding knowledge, so for me, it's, I can definitely like, I don't know if I'm trying to change text, like that's just going into HTML, but maybe that's like going to be outdated. I don't know. I think with Cursor, like they've recently had this Claude 3.7 sonnet thinking where it shows you like, oh, the user wants this, the user wants this, and I think that's also been helpful for debugging, but
Yeah.
I think both of these, it sounds like both of these tools are super valid. It just depends on like your level of comfort with like code and like where you are in like the design or technical spectrum.
Yeah. I actually didn't know that uh Cursor relied on Claude's models, which is new to me. And also like they just implemented access to the web, right? So like even that makes it that much more powerful.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think it has, I typically run Claude on it, but you can definitely change models to like ChatGPT.
Okay.
Um, too. What does Lovable run on?
Mm, that is a good question. I'm not sure. And I don't think it gives you the option of
Yeah,
choosing model.
yeah.
Well, I'm checking right now.
How much do you pay for your subscription?
It's $20 a month, which honestly I think is really reasonable.
Yeah.
Does Lovable.
Does your work like it or how does it feel about it?
Oh, I don't use it for work. I actually use it for like personal projects/tasks. Like I'm in the beginning stages of my job search process, so I like created this little job tracker. It's kind of a mix of Miro and Trello, but like it just gives me words of affirmation throughout the process. So I
Oh,
use Lovable to build that.
cute. I love that.
Okay, and then I have an answer for you. Lovable runs on Mistral models.
Hmm.
That French startup.
I've not heard of it, Miss Rowe.
Mistral, yeah. I came to hear about them because I know that they were kind of the leaders in like language in terms of culturally attuned AI responses across a variety of languages like Bengali, Arabic, et cetera, et cetera.
Ooh, that's neat. That's neat. Yeah, I mean I'm sure that's like something that um, you know, ChatGPT and Cursor maybe not be the best at because they're probably more Anglo-centric.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. But anyway, I want to thank you, Olga, and sorry, is it Steven?
Yeah.
Steven.
Yeah,
Okay,
thanks so much for
for
joining.
organizing. Have a great night, guys.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.